I'm looking for my father. I went to the cottage, but the doors are locked and he wouldn't answer my knock or the phone."
"Because he's here. When the power went out, I thought he'd be safer in the guest room."
Her shoulders relaxed and she leaned her head back against the chair and closed her eyes. "Thank God. I worried he was lying inside the cottage, unable to move, or wandering around in this storm, delusional from the pain medication the doctor gave him." A snort had her eyes flashing open. Even in the low light, it was easy to read the contempt on Stetson's face.
"You were worried? Since when do you care about your father, Lillian Lee?"
Disbelief and anger had her sitting straight up. "Excuse me?" He cocked his head and stared down at her. Had he gotten even taller and more muscular, or was it just a trick of the shadows from the glowing firelight?
"Do I have it wrong? Have you been secretly visiting your daddy and I wasn't aware of it? Because I haven't seen you anywhere around for the last 8 years. You weren't here when he caught the flu and was in bed for a week. You weren't here when he cut his hand sharpening his hedge trimmers and had to have 12 stitches. You weren't here when he fell off a ladder and broke his leg in 2 places. And you sure haven't been here for any holidays, birthdays, or your mother's birthdays, and the anniversary of her death when your father takes flowers to her grave, alone."
Lily hadn't known about her father's illness or his accident with the hedge trimmers. Both upset her. But what caused a hard lump of emotion to form in her throat was the thought of him going to her mother's gravesite. Alone.
And yet, all he does is brag about you, Stetson continued. "He bursts with pride every time he shows me a book you just released or a Children's Writers Award you won."
Her father was proud of her? Why had he never told her? Probably the same reason he hadn't told her about his accidents, illnesses, and visits to the cemetery. She wouldn't have known that he broke his leg if the doctor hadn't called her because she was listed as his next of kin. And yet, it seemed he had no trouble talking to Stetson. That hurt. It hurt a lot. But Stetson had always known exactly what to say to hurt her. He wasn't done yet.
"What makes absolutely no sense to me is that you have all the time in the world for your writing, but you can't make time to come see your own father. In my book, that's nothing but selfishness."
She wanted to argue, but the truth of Stetson's words cut right through her. Tears of guilt filled her eyes. She tried to blink them away. When she couldn't, she jumped up and headed for the door.